really soon. Really soon. How do you like my royalty-free music? Anyway. Hello there. Hello. I don't see anyone in chat, but that's okay. We are just getting started here. And, let's see now. Here is my agenda. So I want everybody to try to share this stream around. I'll be trying to get a regular schedule, so if you like what I'm doing here, then share it around. Let people know I will be streaming every Thursday evening at 8:30 p.m., every Sunday evening at 8:30 p.m. As you can see, my camera is a little bit subpar. So if you would like to see me in higher quality, please donate to my Cash App for stream equipment. That is at 44100HZ. And if you are a fan of what we're doing, what we're trying to achieve here, then please feel free to donate to the CPI. And the CPI, sorry, I'm just trying to get this chat to work here. Just fixing the chat. CPI events Cash App will go towards our upcoming Chicago event. And it's really important to get that funded. So donate to Cash App CPI events. If you support what we're doing, if you believe what I'm saying, please do so. And finally, I do have a Discord. I have a Discord. Actually, let me get a link up for that Discord. Hi there, Char Char. I look forward to our conversation this Sunday. So yes, I also have a Discord. My Discord, I will post the link to my Discord in chat right now. Okay? Right now. So feel free to join that Discord. It is currently the best way to reach me, to reach my fans, and to get on stream potentially for an interview. Hello, Ryan. Welcome to the stream. Welcome. This is my second stream. And for my first hour here, I will be covering news and such. And then after an intermission for my second hour, maybe it'll be longer or shorter than an hour. It takes as long as it takes, okay? But for the first part, I'll be covering news and stuff. And for the second part, I will be for each stream I do, I will be doing some type of variety. In this case, I will actually be talking a bit about the ideology of Posadism and the UFO Marxism, and just kind of getting you into that cult a little bit, getting you to feel some of that Posadist vibe, as well as clearing up a few misconceptions that I think people have about Posadism. All right. So with that, I will go on to the news. So, Let's get that up here. Now, the first thing I wanted to point out was that I made a mistake my last stream in saying that I thought that Jeff Bezos wanted gas prices to be lower so that his workers wouldn't want to strike for better wages, etc., right? No, completely wrong. He wants gas prices to be higher because this is his understanding of economics. So Jeff Bezos is more far right than Biden, and that is the correction I wanted to make. If he knew better, he would be advocating to lower gas prices, because then his workers may not want to organize for better pay to cover their transportation costs to work and for all of the goods which are made more expensive by high fuel prices. So basically everything. Right. So if he wanted to actually solve, his labor disputes, he might want to advocate for what's better for the workers. But I guess Bezos is not intelligent enough, or his interests lie somewhere else. Anyway, so there's some things that have happened recently that I think Tara Reid does a wonderful job covering right here, and I will let her do it for me.
Recently, the Biden administration approved another $800 million on top of the $54 billion for weapons to Ukraine. Now, finally, a Western reporter asked the question, how much longer are we going to support Ukraine, and how much more money? To which the White House trotted out a staffer we don't see very often, and I'm not sure we're going to see very much again, because he didn't stick to their usual talking points of, we're protecting democracy and freedom. No, he said, we're protecting the liberal world order.
I mean, careful attention to building and sustaining the liberal international world order.
He just comes out and says it. The liberal world order. He came out and said it. The liberal world order. I mean, come on. Like, how can you call people talking about a liberal world order QAnon conspirators? How can you call them that when literally he just comes out and says it?
With the United States and Europe at its core.
Yikes, liberal world order? This kind of brings up words like cabal and elite and ruling class. And it also explains how the world leaders in the West all got together with their very public meetings trying to show unity. And of course, engaging in rhetoric against Russia and Russophobia. And of course, leading that is the former Prime Minister of Great Britain, Boris Johnson, who is talking smack about Vladimir Putin. Well, Boris Johnson had to resign amid scandal, corruption, and incompetence. 50 members of his cabinet resigned in protest, 24 hours, finally forcing him to give his final speech, that by driving the Great Britain economy into the ground with his obsession about Ukraine. And in fact, in the speech, he doubled down and said that the Great Britain would support Ukraine as long as it took.
I mean, say now to the people of Ukraine that I know that we in the UK will continue to back your fight for freedom for as long as it takes.
And that's the rhetoric coming from Joe Biden, whose poll numbers are also in the bucket. And he's considered one of the least popular presidents in U.S. history. So really, that liberal world order, perhaps we should ask Boris Johnson how that's going. But he might be busy getting a new hobby. Maybe Boris Johnson will take up, I don't know, horseback riding?
Yeah, so this snarky video by Tara, I like that it covers two recent things. And on Sunday, I would really like to dig into the whole situation in Britain and get a handle on it. I haven't yet gone deep into it enough, but it is clear with the resignation of Boris Johnson amid the mass scandal, the UK Labour protests. I mean, this liberal world order is completely falling apart, guys. It is falling apart. I have another video that I would like to show you. This is a Uyghur woman living in the Xinjiang region of China who has some things to say about the United States, which is now blocking imports from Xinjiang in order to protect the people there.
嗨，大家好。前两天啊，这个老美的这个拜了个登啊， 又出台了一条法案，说是这个要制裁新疆这些货物，说我们新疆就是强迫劳动，所以他们就是新疆的这些货物呢不允许就是发到美国去。我就是新疆维吾尔族人啊，我就觉得。
So they passed a bill blocking exports from Xinjiang which are produced with slave labor. They have no proof that there is any slave labor occurring, but nonetheless they put these sanctions into place. I mean, if they went by the word of the law that they were passing, we sanction all the goods produced by slave labor, they wouldn't be sanctioning any goods at all. They would simply just leave things as they are. And she's pointing out that she lives in Xinjiang and thinks that this is absolutely ridiculous.
好笑啊！这个老美咋这么自作多情啊？这个新疆的这些货物啊，我们自己国。
Our Xinjiang products can't even meet the demands of our own domestic compatriots, let alone export our products to the U.S. So what she's saying is that these sanctions do nothing, first of all, because Xinjiang already has enough people in China to export to.
国内的同胞都不够用，还给你们发货，还给你们出口，你们真的不要把大牙给人家笑掉了，还制裁这个制裁那个，马上你们也就。
She goes, sanction this, sanction that, your collapsing is imminent. The last struggles. Just like a dying grasshopper that won't be able to jump for much longer. You think you can stop the rejuvenation and the development of China. The great rejuvenation of the Chinese nation is unstoppable, and your collapsing is also inevitable. Look at your own backyard. It is already on fire. Several states want independence. What goes around comes around. Karma is a bitch. You always try to divide other countries, and in the end, your own country will be divided first. This is karma. Do something good before you're collapsing. Xinjiang's economy has indeed stagnated a bit in the last few years due to terrorist attacks funded by the NED, by the National Endowment for Democracy, which does the job that the CIA used to do. And this was caused by the US, she says. So to be honest, our Xinjiang people hate these effing Yankees so badly. There's only shotguns awaiting for you when it comes to Xinjiang. Her words, not mine. Yeah, I mean, to be honest, a lot of Western news publications go, oh, China's going to collapse. China's going to collapse. Well, if you guys were wondering how it feels to have another person tell you your country is going to collapse, now you know how that feels. And the scary part is that she may actually be right. So moving onwards, actually from PSL's Liberation News, we have, I'm no longer a member of PSL, but I still check their publication once in a while because, they do have their own in-house writers, etc. And they say that thousands of pilots are protesting extreme understaffing and outdated contracts. These are pilots. Okay, airline pilots are standing up for their rights in a wave of action. 1,300 pilots from Southwest Airlines stood in the Dallas sun. They are going to picket at 7 different airports, and they are complaining about grueling schedules and chaotic work conditions. I mean, we need either less flights or more pilots is what it seems like, right? Or maybe it's the greed of the airlines that is not paying them enough. I don't know. They said that their bosses took their relief money and pocketed the profits. Okay, so they're not getting paid enough. There's not enough wages going around. I don't know. I don't know if there's unemployed pilots bouncing around. I'd like to know. But I do think that it is very interesting that there are these pilots protesting in America due to their conditions. I mean, pilots. Right? So I think that it's good to look into all these different labor disputes, because small strikes become big strikes. And when the American people when I see pilots protesting, I think, well, what about the people who are not pilots? What about all the people that have much, much worse, much harder living conditions? When are they going to stand up, right? So obviously the job of a pilot is more highly skilled, and this kind of represents the trend of these sort of AFL, right? Workers who see themselves as superior, they see themselves as deserving better conditions, but nonetheless, all workers deserve to have acceptable conditions. I would not wish these things on anybody, right? So in a lot of ways, it is a problem of respect. We need to start seeing our jobs as essential, as irreplaceable, even if there's something as mundane as working at a call center. In order to organize, we have to actually learn to respect our jobs in the same way. Anyway, so moving on, we have from Telesur covering, I'm sure you've heard about the Netherlands farmers blocking supermarket distribution centers. Now, this is in reaction to recent climate legislation, which says that they have to cut down the amount of nitrogen that they use in their fertilizer. Well, these climate regulations, first of all, will reduce the food production of these farmers, but also, according to the government analysis, about 30% of these farmers could go bankrupt. So, if you ask me, this is something that is very interesting, right? Now, some people see this the same way as the trucker protest. They go, well, the truckers were reacting against vaccines. These guys are reacting against the environment. So, they're simply just right-wing reactionaries, and we can just write them off. Now, I disagree with that. And Marx wisely said that we need to essentially support every movement which aims to abolish the present state of things. If workers were in control, we know that these problems would not be occurring. So for me personally, I think that this is an issue that we can actually get behind in some way or another. I'm not in the Netherlands, but vocally, I support these farmers protesting. I support their right to do this. And I also think it's very interesting that these environmental regulations are being enforced in the wake of fertilizer sanctions happening, or rather the refusal to export fertilizer on the part of Russia as a reaction to the sanctions placed on Russia. And I can't help but wonder if instead of being ecological, this is actually some type of rationing of fertilizer that's being done. It is hard to say. And let's look at some footage of these protests. I would not want to drive down that road. These are anti-curfew protests in the Netherlands. I'm not sure about those ones. Anyway, moving onwards, the campaign for Diane Sayre running for the Senate, I believe, in New York City. Here she is protesting on Coney Island. This is Diane Sayre of the LaRouche org. She is fighting for peace. She is fighting for cooperation and development. And here is her pitch to the public at Coney Island.
Happy 4th of July. It's Diane Sayre, LaRouche candidate for U.S. Senate running against Chuck Schumer. Chuck Schumer, the senator from Wall Street, who never met a war he didn't support. It's time to throw him out of Washington. Chuck Schumer has been in Washington for 42 years, bailing out Wall Street, getting us in forever wars, bragging about his, Schumer wants to spend trillions of dollars propping up his corrupt Wall Street friends, and he's supporting billions of dollars of aid to Nazis in Ukraine who are going to get us in a nuclear war with Russia.
I like the way she puts that. Very simple, very direct. Chuck Schumer is a Wall Street candidate. He is sending money to Nazis in Ukraine, which is going to get us into a nuclear war with Russia. I could not put it more simply and directly myself. And I really admire her bravery reaching out to the people of New York City. So, moving on, we have somewhat more international news is that Russia and Venezuela are trying to expand their oil sector cooperation. They are working on a pact to circumvent Western sanctions. Well, as you may know, in order to circumvent these sanctions, you have to probably break the law which was set by the United States. When was that video from? Well, let's take a peek. Right? This was on the 4th of July that she was doing this. Happy 4th of July, she says at the start. But yeah, so in order for Russia and Venezuela to expand their cooperation and create these pacts, they may have to violate the international law, which was set down by the U.S. And so this is a very interesting development, especially considering that the U.S. was trying to get oil from Venezuela, actually going so far as to ignore the puppet president that we were trying to put into place, Juan Guaido, and actually talking to their real leader, Maduro. And now Venezuela is trying to trade with Russia for oil, right? So the American establishment probably feels very betrayed. They are probably upset that they cannot get Russia and Venezuela to do what they're saying here. And we'll have to see if this situation escalates or if they are successful in making these trades. I think that we're going to see a lot more of this type of trade coming about. Waba is asking, where are the UFOs? Well, guess what? That was not clickbait, but I covered news in the first half of my streams, and I cover variety in the second half of my streams. So the variety will come after I cover a few more news stories in this first section. So, this is not exactly news, but I thought that this opinion piece was very good and very important for people on the left to be aware of. Palestinians are not animals in a zoo on Kanafani, and the need to redefine the role of the victim intellectual. So this is an article written by Ramzi Baroud, and he is talking about how Palestine has been treated as this sort of victim state, which has been represented by these intellectuals who are talking about Palestine in this way that doesn't really truly empower the Palestinian people. It doesn't represent the battle which is going on, but rather paints them as martyrs and aligns with this sort of weak politics which appeals to a lot of the Western political sphere. So years before the U.S. invaded Iraq in 2003, U.S. media introduced many new characters, promoting them as experts to ratchet up U.S. propaganda to gain support for the war, right? And they got 72% of Americans in favor of the Iraq war, is the point that he's making, by demonizing Iraq and dehumanizing its people, right? And the Palestinian intellectuals, they say the native informant is a willing servant of imperialism, right? So these are people that actually, my mistake. I misinterpreted the article title. And this is an embarrassing moment for me, but this is what happens when you try to put together stream content. These are actually people in Palestine who themselves are presenting themselves as rebels against the Palestinian government, in the same way that the sort of rebels in Iraq were portrayed. My bad. Anyway, I will try not to make that mistake again. But let's just move on. This is what happens when I learn to produce streams. I'm going to make mistakes. So, Iran says Washington is not qualified to talk about human rights. Now, the only reason why I posted this article is because I see a lot of people trying to be very provocative and say that I'm against human rights, or human rights is a meaningless phrase, or something like that. And this is all because the United States uses their definition of human rights as an imposition on other countries. But to me, this doesn't actually mean that human rights themselves are a concept which we should reject entirely. And I think that it says something kind of interesting to me. I made a compass diagram the other stream where on the top you have the hard people who are overly obsessed with power and they're just overly hard, and then on the soft end you have people that are just sort of soft, like intellectuals, like they're never going to win power, never going to achieve anything, right? Well, I think that when you say you reject human rights, you're kind of going a little bit too far into the hard end, right? And part of why I say this, and this is my bias, I'm a member of CPI, and point 4 of our program is the Economic Bill of Rights. And I think that actually, instead of defining human rights as the right to property and the right to say whatever you want and advocate for the overthrow of your government and do violent protests and all of these rights, which the imperialists love people in other countries to have, we need to replace that with a new definition of human rights, an economic definition of human rights. Waba says, force the government to enforce the regulations in 2019 has nothing to do with the Ukraine thing. Okay, yeah, so that's interesting. Yeah, so I should speculate a little bit less here, right? Because if the regulations came into place in 2019, then the fact that Russia stopped nitrogen exports is simply a coincidence, unless there's some really crazy foresight going on, which I doubt would be the case. Okay, so I believe that we need to replace the sort of bourgeois definition of human rights with something that is based on economic rights, the right to have food, water, healthcare, and basic human protections, the right to a good paying job and education, the right to a high quality home. And we need to criticize the bourgeois rights, right? And what Engels' criticism of freedom of property, the bourgeois right, was that it actually translates to freedom from property for the majority of people. So, we know that just because you have a freedom, technically, I could own lots of property, doesn't mean that the freedom actually translates to anything meaningful, right? So this Iranian official, right, Iran's High Council for Human Rights, Kazem Babadi, says that the United States is in no position to talk about the issue of rights given its far and wide violations on the international stage. And one of the things that everybody should know about Iran is the fact that we have been trying to sanction them to death during the COVID pandemic, right? And they say that their violation against human rights is to politicize the issue, right? So human rights are actually not so much a political issue, so much as a basic fact of good governance. And if you want to show yourself that you are qualified to lead a government, then you should take the question of human rights very, very seriously. So yeah, and finally, the last news item that I wanted to cover today is these allegations, which if I say they're true, I'm pretty sure I'll get booted off of YouTube, but I can still say that these allegations exist, I believe, of reports of the new reports about the bio projects which have been going on in Ukraine, which they claim are linked to Hunter Biden and funded by the Pentagon. This is a long article that I cannot go through right now, but I have written a summary of the article. Okay, according to this piece from Sputnik News, Russia's Ministry of Defense alleges that research company Metabiota, which backed by Hunter Biden and linked to the Pentagon, was actually studying pig pathogens, which would affect pig animals for farming and actually would affect food supply. This is in addition to studying Ebola and other pathogens which would affect humans. They allegedly found action plans which talk about the strength of Ukraine's ability to respond to bioweapons, as well as reports showing many flagrant safety violations in those biolabs. While there is no evidence that I can find in this report or anything else that I have seen published by Russia proving that bioweapons were going to be used against Russia, the fact that these laboratories exist is certainly interesting, right? And the fact that Russia is publishing these reports, the fact that they are framing the biolabs in this way shows that they feel that they have been victim or would be victim to these biological weapons of mass destruction, right? And this further blurs the red lines of this situation, because the use of biological weapons against Russia would certainly be a red line of some kind. And if Russia feels that they are this way, then this represents some sort of willingness to justify a future attack, right? And I also think that this whole situation in Ukraine, as it escalates and as it could lead to nuclear war, is very relevant to the second half of my stream. I see Waba is talking about how the regulations here first came from the 70s because of the big agriculture lobby. More farmers than any other group are millionaires in the Netherlands, while costing billions to society because of their water policy. Interesting. More farmers than any other group are millionaires in the Netherlands. Okay. That is interesting. And I've seen people analyze the class character of these farmers, right? And I think that they more or less fall into the category of people who are petty bourgeois. Most of them fall into the category of people who are petty bourgeois, who are afraid of losing their status as small property holders, right? And they're becoming proletarianized. And the people who are threatened by this have this dual character, where in one way they want to just simply put things back to how they were, and they want to continue to feel that they're in a superior position. But on the other hand, they may actually become proletarianized, and in the process of becoming proletarianized, they are a valuable ally of anybody who seeks to fight against the big bourgeoisie, right? The bigger bourgeoisie. which has more power. So there may be reasons for socialists in the Netherlands to try to create an alliance with these people, with those farmers. All right, so that is the news. I think I give myself a 6 out of 10 with that one. I think I could do better, but I feel pretty good about that, and probably will stuff fewer articles in next time. Okay, and I want you guys to just sit back and relax while I prepare the next half of the stream, which I think is going to be a lot more fun and interesting, where I will cover the ideology of Posadism. And we're going to get into that. It's going to be a little bit trippy, and I will see you guys soon. My gosh, I forgot to unmute myself. Hello there, Roscoe Dash. Hello there, Anthony Martin Davis. Welcome to the stream. So, if you are just tuning in, I will be streaming every night at 8:30 p.m. CST on Thursday nights and on Sunday nights. Not every night, but twice a week at 8:30 p.m. CST. Still no sound. No, I've fixed it now. There's just a delay. Anyway, so please like and share the stream. All right, I'm still building up my skills, so I'm not trying to go for maximum exposure, but if you think that this is worth watching in its current state, please absolutely do share the stream. If you want to see me in higher quality, then please donate to my Cash App. That is 44100HZ. And if you support and agree with what we are doing here, then please donate to CPI. CPI is the org that I'm in. We are running an event in Chicago in early August. Let me actually get the exact date of that event because I should have that on my mind. And this event is August 6th, okay? Location will be announced. The event is on August 6th. That is the CPI event, and if we want it to run as smoothly as possible and to support future events, then please donate to CPI. That is Cash App CPI events. Okay. Now, let's get into the ideology of Posadism. Okay, so I think that Posadism has absolutely been misrepresented. However, in this first hour, I am going to play into the idea that watching this, you likely already have about Posadism. And I'm going to show you a man that plays into this exact idea. This man, we call him Comrade Communicator. His channel is called Posadist Rebel News. And after we cover this strange man, who I think is very interesting, then I am going to actually read some writings by J. Posadis and clear up some misconceptions that people seem to have about Posadism. And because of the nature of how I'm going to cover this, I am going to put up a warning here on screen. Warning, satire, okay? Warning, there's going to be satire here. So, now, if you've been paying attention, you know that nuclear war is, once again, a possibility. And like in the Cuban Missile Crisis, and like in the Korean War, this is another situation where two nuclear powers both wish to occupy the same battlefield, America and Russia in Ukraine. And since Russia is already there, America is coming closer and closer and blurring the red lines. Friends and comrades, the threat of nuclear annihilation is more real than ever. It is more real than ever. They are running nuclear tests, and soon the inevitable will occur. This, friends and comrades, proves the Posadist thesis that nuclear war is inevitable. These conflicts will continue and continue until their inevitable conclusion. And just like Marx cheered on the inevitable development of capitalism, so too should we cheer on the inevitable development of nuclear war. And now I will show you Comrade Communicator of Posadist Rebel News as he explains the ideology of Posadism.
Marxism is futurology. Understanding Posadist Catastrophism in its appropriate context, by Comrade High Commander, translated from the Russian by Comrade Communicator, edited by Comrade Polemicist. Marx is rightly commemorated as one of the originators of the discipline of sociology, as well as a towering colossus in the field of economics. And yet, one of the most important aspects of his theoretical contribution is routinely omitted by detractors and adherents alike. The entire Marxist project may be defined as the collection and analysis of data for the purposes of predicting the next revolutionary crisis, followed by the essential task of figuring out just how this crisis may be utilized in order to advance the cause of world proletarian revolution. Marx must then also be understood as a founding father of futurology, and Marxism must be acknowledged as, among other things, a futurological school. Though it was Marx and Engels who first developed the historical and analytical framework for this monumental effort, Lenin and Trotsky were the first to truly put it into action. Posadism took stock of the successes and ultimate failures of this first attempt, and brought the theory up to date for the modern age. And it now falls to us to follow Posadism as Lenin and Trotsky followed Marx, for while bourgeois futurologists attempt to predict the future in various ways, the point of Marxist futurology is to change it. The development of a practical predictive science, which is to be used to emancipate the toiling masses of Earth, is the fundamental purpose of Marxism. If we do not understand Marxism as futurology, then we cannot truly understand Marxism. Marxist futurology is first and foremost a catastrophist futurology. Marxism is catastrophist in both the scientific as well as in the political sense. When we say catastrophist in the scientific sense, we are referring to either the implicit or explicit focus on extreme moments of social and technological disruption in Marxist historiography, on the crisis as a prerequisite for the revolution, and on the revolution itself as the defining event or necessary driving force of history. But while Marxist futurology's relationship to the crisis, the extreme event or the social catastrophe, is perfectly analogous to catastrophist theories in the physical sciences, Marxist political catastrophism presents a more unusual case. In politics, catastrophism tends to express itself as an appeal to an impending crisis, or a series of ongoing or predicated crises, which is meant to justify an extreme course of action proposed by the technocratic power structure.
Yes, friends and comrades, Marxism is not a science of liberating the proletariat. This Marxism is what we think we can dazzle you with crazy theories about the future. That's Marxism. And whatever's more futuristic, but also pessimistic, that, my friends, that is Marxism.
Or even the creation of permanent emergency powers, or some equivalent thereof. Though this is not unheard of in Marxist theory and praxis, this species of catastrophism played a prominent role in the early degeneration of the worker states. This is not Marxist political catastrophism in any meaningful sense. Marxist political catastrophism distinguishes itself by its eminently optimistic and direct nature, while
Oh, yes, but it's also optimistic, which is why we say that the world is going to get blown up with nuclear power. Marxism it's also pessimistic, though, because of that. But Anyway,
we have never forgotten an
don't worry
opportunity
about
to
it.
point to the failures and contradictions within the capitalist system on which any given social crisis is predicated. We do not merely attempt to terrify the public with tales of impending doom in order to browbeat them into submitting to our program. Quite to the contrary, the greatest successes of the proletarian movement have always come about due to the intelligent and well-organized utilization of the conditions created by the crisis itself. We do not simply seek to use the idea of the crisis, but the very material of the crisis itself, which we understand to be the very vital stuff of history to achieve our ends. We do not use the anticipation of the crisis to sow fear, but instead prepare to use the crisis itself as a revolutionary weapon.
Yes, my friends, material matters. And Jennifer Epstein, my friends and comrades, we must use the coming nuclear crisis to create a Marxist revolution. How? Well, let's listen.
In this sense, our political catastrophism is reactionary political catastrophism turned on its head. The fundamental questions of Marxist catastrophism form the basis of bitter disputes within the socialist movement. What constitutes a revolutionary crisis? Are we in the midst of one now? What is the task of the proletarian militant during non-revolutionary times? Some define the revolutionary crisis so specifically as to define it right out of existence, while others see a potential breaking point lurking behind every municipal election or burning dumpster, projecting a revolutionary mirage that is always imminent, but always just out of reach. But we must move beyond mere factional squabbles and examine these vital questions scientifically. We must understand that the revolutionary potential of any crisis within the current system must be gauged according to both the geographical scope of the crisis, as well as its depth or severity. The First World War was a crisis within capitalism, the geographical scope of which encompassed the major European imperialist powers of the time, as well as the Ottoman Empire. The depth of the crisis created by the war, however, differed from country to country, and since our subject is specifically the proletarian revolution, we must consider a third vital factor: the state of the proletarian movement within each specific country. We all know how this international revolutionary crisis panned out. It was a near thing in Italy, Germany, and Hungary, while revolutions of national independence in Egypt, Sudan, Ireland, and Malta struck a blow against British imperialism. And both the Ottoman and Austro-Hungarian empires collapsed. But it was only in the Russian Empire, where the socialist movement was as strong, advanced, and deeply rooted as it was anywhere else in the world, that the severity of the crisis was certainly greatest, that a worker state was successfully established. The lessons of the Great Soviet Experiment are manifold, but perhaps the most important of these is that socialism in one country is not a sustainable goal.
Yes, my friends, we cannot create socialism in one country because the world has not yet been destroyed enough. No, my friends. The true expansion of Trotskyism is not only to expand our military across the world to establish a global socialist state, but it is also to create a blank canvas on which to establish socialism. And how will we do this? Well,
even if that one country is as vast and rich in natural resources and human ingenuity as the Soviet Union. It then stands to reason that in order to spark a revolution that will have any chance whatsoever of creating world communism, we first need an international crisis that is felt as deeply all across the globe as the destabilizing effects of the First World War were in the Russian Empire, and we will most likely need a world socialist movement that is as strong, advanced, and deeply rooted as the Russian one was, in 1917. It would seem at first glance that we are in the camp that has defined the revolutionary crisis out of existence, but nothing can be farther from the truth. Juan Posadas, Argentinian socialist and leader of the Fourth International in South America, infamously pointed to an imminent global crisis that not only meets these requirements, but, in order to compensate for the atrophied state of the international socialist movement, actually exceeds them.
Yes, the Posadists, they are the last remaining truly revolutionary group.
Requirements, but in order to
look at the Posadists, they're the only table left. They're the only table left fighting for workers' rights. The Posadists, the final burning flame of socialism.
Compensate for the atrophied state of the international socialist movement actually exceeds them. Because of this, Posadas and his adherents have been pilloried as advocates for global nuclear war. This is the equivalent of accusing Lenin of having been a supporter of the imperialist world war and using his revolutionary defeatism as the sole basis of the charge. Because that is the true nature of Posadis's nuclear realism. It is nothing more and nothing less than a reinvention of Lenin's revolutionary defeatism for the atomic age. Both Lenin and Posadas assessed the stark material circumstances that history had placed before them and asked themselves, how can this be used to advance the cause of revolutionary communism? And yet, whenever a Posadas walks into the room, it is as if the Red Death has arrived at the masquerade. The terrestrialist Trotskyist, who had just started lecturing some anarchists about the revolutionary necessity of the suppression of the Kronstadt Soviet, suddenly falls silent. The Stalinist, who was just about to start lecturing the Trotskyist about the revolutionary necessity of the Great Purge, cries out in shock. We hear the old refrain up and down the line, revolution is no rose garden. But any discussion of the revolutionary potentialities of the nuclear war is beyond the pale. Why?
Well, of course, we don't want nuclear war to destroy the world, but we have to be realists here, guys. We have to be realists, and,
Why else? Because it makes their roses wilt.
This is Posadist Rebel News, of course. Anyway, we'll get into it.
That our ideas elicit from the terrestrial leftists are nothing more and nothing less than the result of a recognition, conscious or unconscious, that Posadist has simply resolved a major contradiction within their own doctrines, and they are as terrified of the very fact of the resolution as they are of its nature.
Few Marxists are willing to accept the truth. Very few Marxists are willing to accept the truth of Posadism.
This is a necessary question, though, and a question that must be answered. Can socialism really be built amidst the extreme conditions of the atomic post-apocalypse?
Can socialism really be built amid the extreme conditions of the atomic post-apocalypse, guys?
This is the great paradox of every revolutionary socialist project. The very same extreme conditions that sufficiently weakened the Tsarist state in order to create a revolutionary opening did not immediately disappear after the Bolsheviks took power. And these conditions did indeed make building a socialist society that much more difficult. And it was not the presence of these extreme conditions, but their geographically uneven distribution that allowed the revolution to be contained. If the post-war situation in the other imperialist powers more closely resembled the total and utter collapse of Russia, it is very likely that the revolution would have been global in scale. It can be said that Soviet socialism was a rose.
Yes, you see, for the complete destruction of Russia would have meant that the Russians would have been whatever few Russians left with their completely destroyed country But they would have just been really mad and gone into all of the other countries to create their revolution. Yes.
Bloomed on radioactive soil. The Civil War, the Great Famine, the suppression of the other revolutionary socialist parties, the suppression of the right and left oppositions, the Cheka, the Gulag, the purges, the witch hunts, the brutalization of the peasants, the Ukrainian and Kazakh forced famines, the pact with Hitler, the anti-Semitic campaigns, the Second World War, Soviet ethnic cleansing in Crimea and the Caucasus. Disaster followed upon disaster, atrocity on atrocity. Whether we call these unavoidable tragedies, revolutionary necessities, unfortunate missteps, suicidal incompetence, or outright crimes against humanity, it is undeniable that each and every one of them not only made building socialism more difficult, but also made the socialist society that was being built uglier and uglier. But comrades, we have never claimed that actually existing post-apocalyptic socialism will be pretty. We freely admit that it may well be even more hideous than any of its predecessors. Our claim is simply that only socialism can save humanity after the oceans rise and the bombs fall, and that no one, other than Posadism himself, has yet proposed any other path to world socialism that stands up against the parameters that have been established by history itself. The left accelerationists have come closest, but they are, in their own way, even farther from the mark than the rest. The accelerationists propose that the global crisis that will bring an end to capitalism is capitalism itself. They believe that technological developments, specifically in the field of artificial intelligence, will make the capitalist mode of production obsolete. This is falsified, however, by the simple fact that even under the current mode of production, scarcity is largely a social construct. The global economy has already developed the capacity to feed, clothe, and otherwise care for the entire human population some time ago. And yet the most abject privations in all of these areas persist on a vast scale. Obsolete social, economic, and political structures are incredibly resilient and tend to set the parameters for whatever eventually replaces them. It is also true that the same technological base can support very different sorts of societies.
I should have sped this up a while ago. This man likes to just go the hell on. But listen, okay? His point, as he gets to it eventually, is that we should accelerate not the collapse of capitalism. No, friends and comrades. Do not accelerate the collapse of capitalism. Accelerate the inevitable advent of nuclear war. Yes. And though we do not support the occurrence of nuclear war, well, it's gonna happen eventually. So, I mean, like, we should probably, probably try to accelerate that. But guys, this is not the entire story, okay? This is not the entire story. In order to fully understand what's going on, we must listen to our sea comrades, okay?
Technological development can be a two-edged sword under capitalism, friends and comrades. Yes, even as it gives us new and wonderful capabilities, it can also dull our capacities. Yes, it can dazzle the senses in the most unexpected and disastrous ways. We see this, as we've just described, in the case of drones affecting the science of ufology. But we see it expressed far more starkly in what our sea comrades, the dolphins, call the Great Confusion. Comrade High Commander learned all about the Great Confusion from the Commodore, And I will explain here that the Commodore is what we call the matriarch of a certain dolphin pod that plays and hunts in the area where Comrade High Commander and I meet. The Commodore is in fact Comrade High Commander's valuable ally and dear companion. And due to the fact that she speaks excellent Russian, she is also an invaluable informant.
Yes, the Russian-speaking dolphins. Tell us of the great confusion, comrades.
About the ins and outs of dolphin life. So, what is the great confusion? Well, it is nothing less than an ongoing apocalyptic event. It is, in actual fact, the collapse of a once world-spanning dolphin culture. Not really a civilization in that conventional sense that we sometimes, we tend to speak of when we talk about civilization. No, unlike the octopi, dolphins have never lived in cities. There was never an urban, nor even a settled dolphin civilization.
Oh, not that he knows of. I've spoken to dolphins that tell me about their wonderful cities, which they used to have.
This was not a material technological civilization as we know it, friends and comrades. But what made world dolphin society a civilization in the most powerful and meaningful sense of that word was a highly dynamic global communication network made up of and maintained by every dolphin pod on the planet. Whales, too. It was kind of an internet and kind of an ongoing, millennia-old, world-spanning conversation, if you could imagine that. And it was through this quasi-internet, this aquasonic wonder of mammalian ingenuity, that our sea comrades produced and reproduced a rich and complicated culture, common norms, stories, aspirations, and something called sonar poemscapes. But that was before the world's navies and civilian fleets entered the sonar age, and while very few primates, and fewer Homo sapiens still, have ever known anything at all about the pre-confusion dolphin society, long-range cetacean communication capabilities are well documented in the scientific literature, as is the deterioration of the range thereof in noisy waters. Technological development under capitalism, friends and comrades, can be a two-edged sword. What in fact began with the ubiquity of motorized craft in the world's seas and oceans really came to a head, friends and comrades, with large-scale adoption of active sonar technology. That world-spanning network, the one that sustained cetacean civilization for millennia, well, it simply collapsed. And that was the Great Confusion. The Great Confusion had overtaken the seas and oceans of our pale blue dot. At the same time, the increasingly isolated pods were being assailed with fishing nets, poisons, entire floating continents of trash, red tides, microplastics. Well, the ocean sea was rapidly deteriorating into something like a watery, post-apocalyptic hellscape. Whenever I speak about the importance of...
Yes, my friends and comrades, it is with a heavy heart that we speak of the collapse of the dolphin civilization, and because of our inability to respect the sonar of dolphins, and because of our disrespect for their environment, Oh, friends and comrades, we have created a situation wherein alien communication is completely off of the table. Capitalism completely rejects the possibility of speaking with the dolphins because it's not profitable. Socialism will actually allow us to speak with the aliens and with the dolphins. Yes, comrades, yes. And as further evidence of the genius of Posadism and the genius of Comrade Communicator, let's listen to him explain how he knew that Trump would win in 2016.
When, back then, 4 years ago, Election Day 2016, I was standing there for whatever reason on the train platform, and I was looking out at it. I was looking out at the parachute jump. It was all lit up for Election Day. Red, white, and blue American flag going round, 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 except, there was something wrong with it. There often is this late in the season, but this was a very peculiar and ominous irregularity. The bottom of the thing was mostly black with little bits of color, mostly white sparks. It looked like the flag as it was spinning. It looked like it was being torn apart. It looked like it was being sucked into the void under it, the starry void beneath it, into the abyss. And when I came back from my sojourn that day, the election results were in, but I didn't see them. I hadn't turned on the TV. I wasn't looking at my phone. But then I knew that my premonition, that ill-omened, whirling, spinning flag being sucked into the void. Well, I was going to visit a friend after my sojourn, and I was walking down.
Yes, Comrade Communicator has explained how the flag getting sucked into the Coney Island parachute jump proves that Trump's racism was going to cast a dark shadow over America. Okay, why is he wearing that hat? What is this guy's deal? Comrade Communicator? What, he sounds kind of like, I don't know, like Orson Welles, or like a book on tape about like ghosts and zombies or something. Like it, I don't like that. To me, this guy, okay, when I think, and this is no longer satire, guys, when I think of Posadism, I kind of think about a guy like this. Like, he's kind of like a walking, stereotype, right? And like, genuinely, man, like, if you think the world is going to explode with nuclear weapons, why do you care whether Trump or Biden, or in this case it was Hillary, but why do you care which one of them wins the election? Like, I mean, if you genuinely wanted to blow up the world, then I think voting Democrat is actually the superior choice. Right? But he talks all about Trump's racism. He's obsessed with Trump's like racism. Well, I don't think it matters whether or not Trump is racist if the world is going to be like nuclear annihilated, like if you actually believe that, right? So, anyway, I don't really think that this guy's understanding of Posadism lines up 100% with what and he's kind of saying, look, if this wasn't clear, that the American flag getting sucked into a void means that America is in decline, and Trump's election was evidence that this country is being sucked down the void, obviously, as opposed to Hillary, who would have, been somehow better, not really, but anyway. So I think that Another thing, and I kind of skipped it before he got to this because I got real tired of listening to him. He's very certain that aliens will save us after nuclear war. He's very certain that the aliens will save us, right? And it just, that's not what I heard from Posadis at all, actually. I read Posadis, and I did not get the sense of certainty that this man has. So I think that he may be a follower of Posadis, he may be a member of a Posadist org, but I don't think that this is the true representative of Posadism. Jennifer's asking, what do I think about accelerationism? And people that are accelerationists. Well, this is exactly it, because I think that accelerationists are seldom more than advocates for a particular thing. They say this is what I think should happen, right, so that we can accelerate conditions, and then they kind of lust for like the breakdown, and they write, like Nick Land writes like this weird stuff about I'm trying to write what's outside of reality, which is imposing itself on reality and forming itself within our reality, you know, as if he can conjure up these like satanic spirits that are going to, like, you know, cause the future to arrive in the present, kind of, right? Well, I mean, you can do all this, but like ultimately writing all of this weird poetry and stuff, it's not, you're not actually causing political change, at least as far as I can tell, right? So to me, accelerationism actually becomes, in its final stage, not a political movement, but an artistic movement, which kind of celebrates this accelerating collapse of systems, which may happen on some level, but you know, I think that also after collapse something else happens, right? And hopefully that something else is a little bit more stable, because you know we haven't had a world which is simultaneously modern and organized to serve public good, eliminate poverty, and stabilize itself. No, we still have these vestiges of barbarism which we're growing out of and shedding, which will never leave human nature, barbarism, but the barbarism of the American Empire is hanging over the shadow of the world in this way, right? And I think the accelerationists don't understand how the shadow of American imperialism, or really the imperialism itself, is actually separable from the good of the world and the everyday life that humans want to live. You know, having a house, having friends, playing music and hobbies, and all of these different studies and all of these things that we love to do as humans, these common bonds of humanity and these basic things, you know, these are the things that define humanity. To me, right? And the accelerationists seem to forget this, and they get lost in this collapse mongering, to the point where if an accelerationist were to see a grandma knitting, you know, or somebody reading a fiction book, you know, they might just kind of go, well, they're just dwelling in the nihilism of life or something. They don't understand the sort of, you know, basic humanity, I think. So, you know, if this guy has got you thinking about odd things, right? Like, to me, listening to this guy, now look, this is the second or third time I've heard him say all this stuff, but listening to this guy definitely triggers some interesting thoughts in my head, right? Thinking about these dolphin civilizations, nuclear apocalypse, aliens, you know, all of these things, right? And, well, guess what? This guy, he's like 1/10 of what Posadis is like. Like, when you actually read Posadis, that like kind of strange vibe that you get, which gets you thinking about odd stuff, Posadis really knew how to tickle a certain odd part of the mind, similar to like science fiction writings, like a good science fiction story, right? And so now on stream, I am going to try to invoke that same feeling by reading you some of the writings of Posadis. Okay? And in order to facilitate this, I have produced some ambient sound using a modular synthesizer, which I'm going to play in the background of my reading. in order to invoke the brainwaves necessary to achieve the lifted state that a Posadist has entered into, that they embody. So here we go. J. Posadis. Flying saucers. The process of matter and energy. Science. The revolutionary and working class struggle and socialist future of mankind. June 26th, 1968. I'm going to lean back for this one. Life can exist on other planets, in other solar systems, in other galaxies and universes. The passage of matter from the inorganic to the organic state could take place in a different manner to how it does on Earth, such that energy could be used in a more effective manner. Here, we barely know how to make the best use of oil, and in a very limited fashion, nuclear energy that we have at hand. They, on the contrary, may be on the way to exploiting all the energy existing in matter. That is, they, the aliens. They can use all the energy that we still do not know how to employ on Earth and transform it into light. It could be that matter is organized differently in other planetary systems or galaxies, in infinite combinations and in totally different forms than those we know on Earth. We cannot imagine what it is like, but we can imagine very well that there may be an organization of energy infinitely superior to what we have here. In the Soviet Union, they have discovered a ray infinitely faster than light, which is something totally new. This same ray may have been discovered on other planets millions of years ago and already been used. While we may take X amount of time to get from one continent to another, they perhaps do it in a half second. The conception of life and the organization of matter are determined by all such things. This energy must contain a property and force infinitely superior to anything we know. We can conceive of a being which just by raising its hand can produce light, draw energy to it, push it away, and organize it. It is possible. We are habituated to seeing and conceiving of life on Earth in the commercial sense of private property, the feeling of possession, which is the basis of social development before the coming of the worker's state. It is this that determines the purpose of life and its relation with other planets. When they plan a journey to another planet, they do so in order to see how to exploit and dominate it, because science is subjected to those who pay for it. Science is not independent. It is not the same thing as when you plant a plant to reap what you want from this. In this case, even if we are subject to nature, we determine what happens. Science, on the contrary, is subject to those who finance it. Astronomers, physicists, where should they go in order to find the equipment for their research? They cannot do so without money. They are not, as individuals, rich enough to pay for these things and also to get by. It is the capitalist state, or indeed the Soviet state, that has the means to pay. They can thus install their equipment, but they limit their capacities to capitalist interests, or the bureaucratic limitations imposed by the leadership of the workers' state. That is why our knowledge of physics, of matter, and of astronomy is still only at an embryonic stage. We still have no real knowledge of what exists. We constantly correct the very basis of discoveries, whether for Newton, Einstein, or all the others. The forms and combinations of matter are infinite. There are forces within it that we do not utilize. We must discover the power of what it is possible to do. The force that allows us to raise our arms is called kinetic energy. Why this energy? What is it that impels the activity of the cells? There is no outside force. It is indeed an internal movement. But what is this force? The force that impels movement is a source of energy, which must have a primary form of development before it even lifts the arm, because there already exists the capacity that allows us to conceive in our spirits the need of raising our arms. One Japanese scholar advanced a conclusion rather like our own concerning earthquakes. He said that it was criminal to waste the energy made by these earthquakes. It is possible to make a system drilling into the earth like a sort of radar, measuring all the movements, the gases within the earth, its interior shifts due to gas or to the rotations of the sun and the earth, of which scientists are still unaware. The Japanese scholar also said that we could predict, contain, and indeed make use of this energy. We said the same thing at the time of the Chilean earthquake of 1961. Scientific knowledge is still limited as regards understanding the organization of matter that has permitted a certain form of life and reproduction on Earth. Our scientific capacity is limited as a result of the missed possibilities of such a study, as well as being limited by lack of financial means. It is the capitalists who have these means in hand, but they have capitalist interests. This is a very significant limitation. Moreover, our capacity and audacity for making further observations are limited by the conception of the world established by the appropriation and utilization of property. Our knowledge is limited by particular interests and social prejudices. This is evidently the case, for example, as regards heart transplants. Capitalist mentalities prevent the bourgeoisie from having any perspective, impeding them from taking an interest in the world and limiting their daring to observe it. If they had audacity and resolution, they would realize that they have gone awry and that their existence is no longer justified. Their interests limit and box them in. They place the same limits on science, chemistry, and medicine. Conversely, there is no reason why this should be so on other planets. The class struggle does not have to exist. On Earth, on the contrary, the process of history has played out like this. There is no reason why the same should be true of other planets. The organization of society could take on infinitely superior forms without struggle and antagonisms. There is no reason for fighting. If beings on other planets saw us, they would say astonished, "Oh, they are fighting over a car, shooting, killing each other." For them, death does not exist. Here, it does. The notion of death, the extinction of matter or of cells, is not the same everywhere. For elephants, life lasts 260 years. For human beings, 100, and on average 70 to 80. If the elephant can live for 260 years, it is because the organization of matter in this form allows for such a long life. But why can we not imagine living as long in a different form to the elephant? Without a trunk, why not? We do not know if beings exist in other systems or galaxies, nor how they are constituted. But we believe that they could exist. It is possible that beings will come to study Earth, what life is like here. Beings who departed their homes for Earth 1,000,000 years ago. For us, that corresponds to 1,000,000 years, but for them, it is an insignificant figure, a normal amount. They may well not be subject to our notion of time. time has always been and remains a notion picked up by a society divided into classes. Such a society needed to measure time in order to exploit nature, hence this division of time. Otherwise, there is no reason for its existence. Certainly, we have to deal with periods of time, weather and the seasons, spring, summer, autumn, winter, but there is no reason why there should be seasons on other planets. Why does it have to rain? This apart, time is of no significance. This interest in measuring time is relative to nature, to its effects on life, to the effect of energy on the organism, and to due dates and billing. On other planets, there is no reason why this should be so. For example, no one has to pay debts by a certain time or needs a heart transplant. A being on another planet who saw a heart transplant operation would say, "What is that they're making?" The notion that we have of the origin of life is something that we have learned. But each year, corrections are made to it. For example, the date of the appearance of human beings on Earth. At first, people spoke of 500,000 years ago, then 1,000,000 years, and now that the first anthropoid appeared some 17 million years ago. The dialectical conception of history. All the news of UFOs around the various parts of the world coincide. There are many coincidences, not all of which are exaggerations. We believe and accept that these beings exist. The majority of people who have seen them say that they are not normal, that they are normal beings, and the people who speak of them say that they do not believe in ghosts or spirits. Many people have already seen UFOs. General MacArthur, that Yankee murderer, said with regard to the disappearance of a plane that had struck a strange object, quote, "Perhaps we, together with the Soviets, will have to make a war against an enemy arriving from outside Earth." But conciliation of this type has its limits. Capitalism has no interest in UFOs, and as such makes no research into them. It has no interest in occupying itself with these matters because they cannot reap profits, nor are they useful to capitalism. But people see UFOs, in UFOs, the possibility of advancement and progress. This thus accelerates the fall of the bourgeoisie, shown in all of its uselessness. All of the people who say they have seen extraterrestrials, UFOs, coincide in the fact that these beings have not frightened them, and that they have made themselves understood without using an audible language, showing that they mean no harm. They do not provoke a feeling of alarm, but of serenity. They create sensations of mellowness, suppleness, harmony, reassurance. They do not inspire any fear. They must give off a sense of security by their movements, by their facial demeanor, or in other ways. None among those who have seen them have said, "I was scared," or "they frightened me." On the contrary, they awaken a pleasant sentiment, one of respect. They must emit some sort of rays that cause this sensation, if they do exist. None among those who have seen them have said that they were attacked. They have shown no interest in attacking, violating, stealing, or possessing. They have come to observe. Starting from the fact of the existence of extraterrestrial beings, we can accept that UFOs also exist. We need to await for further proof. It is possible that they have appeared, though it is also possible there has been much fantasizing, exaggeration, or mystical deductions on the part of those who have seen them. But there is testimony from people who seem thoughtful. Neither has the capitalist system nor the bureaucracy in workers' states have an interest in researching this subject because they cannot draw any commercial, political, or military benefit from it. Socialism, on the contrary, does have an interest in this, and so too do the masses. Capitalism feels that it has been made to look inferior, faced with a system that it sees as superior. People draw the conclusion that capitalism is useless. They say, "Look at that, and you, what are you any good for?" The ruling class feels diminished. If it could draw a military gain from doing so, it would conduct research. But capitalism tries, on the contrary, to spread the impression that this is fantasy, so people will not think that there are superior forms of relations and that capitalism is incapable of reaching this level. The workers' state will act in a different way because it has an objective interest in developing socialism. But at all events, the facts are coming to light, in spite of the smokescreens, because there have already been many testimonies. The capitalist ruling class, the chemists, the military are all hiding the facts. But all the information still gets published, amidst all the current worry about war, revolutions, and preparation of the final settling of accounts between capitalism and the world revolution, the constant strikes in anger against the capitalist system, the occupations of factories, of universities, of land, because these questions preoccupy the whole world. In spite of all these other concerns, people are interested in UFOs. We do not know what form they take or their number, but they must exist, or else they would not appear like this. There are reasons enough why capitalists would not invent these matters. They could try to use them to distract attention, but all this runs against their interests. They could divert attention to a concrete fact. But they do nothing but increase people's certainty that the capitalists are no good. Besides, all this concern with UFOs does not stop strikes or factory occupations or revolutions, nor the progress towards socialism. The preoccupation with studying these phenomena has not yet been developed in the workers' states, given people's concentration on getting by, and because the bureaucracy is hiding these matters. It is, certainly, hiding a great amount of research that has taken place in the workers' states. People would see forms of existence superior to those we have today. Socialism, on the contrary, has no fear in being compared with or integrated into higher forms of progress. On the contrary, it seeks out this progress. We have nothing to lose but our chains. This phrase of Marx's can be applied to everything. Moreover, it is absurd that people are discussing the problems with UFOs, while millions of others are dying of hunger. It is capitalism and the bureaucracy of the workers' states that have led to this prejudice that exists in the world. There are possibilities of exploiting matter in this society, that this society is incapable of employing. Capitalism, as well as the bureaucracy, is aware of this inferiority. In the workers' estates, there are researchers who do not measure things in terms of inferiority or superiority, but simply note that in other galaxies and planetary systems, in other universes, it is possible to fully utilize matter and eliminate all this concern with hunger and class struggle. It is possible to wipe the ruling classes out of existence. The system there is superior. The inhabitants of other planets who come here must consider the Earth's inhabitants as mad, always fighting one another. The notion of struggle, of confrontation, certainly does not exist where they come from. Why fight? The historical foundation of the capitalists' and workers' states' bureaucracies' lack of interest in studying UFOs and living beings on other planets is that they see the threat of their own elimination. As such, they do not interest themselves with the continued existence, the life, of human beings. Everything that is not of commercial use or does not serve to facilitate the existence and perpetuation of capitalist power does not interest them. But since society must live, and the proletariat and socialism must advance, these things stimulate people in the capitalist system to concern themselves with the existence of beings on other planets. So too, in the workers' states, The existence of flying saucers and living beings on other planets is a phenomena that the dialectical conception of history can admit. The most immediate consequence we can draw is that if these beings do exist, they must have a societal organization superior to our own. Their appearances are not the effect of bellicose or aggressive sentiments. This means that they have no need of war, that they do not come to Earth with goals of conquest in mind. In this planet's history, when a people has felt itself to be more capable and invaded another country, it did so with conquest in mind in the form of war. The class struggle on Earth is the result of the organization of society into classes, that of the possessors and that of the exploited, the bourgeoisie set against the proletariat which wants to overturn it and build socialism. The behavior of these beings, if it is true that they exist, seems not to be aggressive in character. All the people who say that they have seen them say none of them were aware of an aggressive disposition or inspired fear in them. All of them say that they awakened their curiosity. If these were beings from afar, as we have known in our planet's history, with swords, arquebuses, cannons, stones, and rocks, with tools of conquest, they would inspire fear through their aggressive behavior. But these beings come to observe. They try to make it understood that they intend no harm. Their behavior expresses their superior organization. They have no aggressive impulse. They have no need to kill in order to live. They come only to observe. We can foresee the existence of such beings, even taking into account the fantasies that exist among the reports, stories, observations, and statements. If they exist, we must call on them to intervene, to help us resolve the problems we have here on Earth. The essential task, to suppress hunger, poverty, unemployment and war, and to give everyone the means to live in dignity and lay out the basis for human fraternity. To this end, we must suppress the capitalist system, as well as the bureaucracy of the workers' state as communist parties who do not want to seize power. The fundamental obstacle we face is the capitalist system. We must suppress the force currently in the hands of the capitalist system, nuclear weapons. Destroy all nuclear weapons. Destroy the whole military power of the capitalist system, of Yankee, French, and British imperialism. Appeal to the masses and give them the means immediately to destroy capitalism. Overcome the bureaucracy of workers' states and establish a new society, socialism. We must appeal to the beings on other planets when they come here to intervene and collaborate with Earth's inhabitants in suppressing poverty. We must make this call to them. It is possible to make ourselves understood to them. We must not, of course, expect that they will understand immediately, but we must make appeals to them if we believe that they can indeed exist. If we have any possibility of making contact with them, we must not fall into individual scientific curiosity out of some desire to see where they come from and to visit other planets. We must unite with them, they who seem more powerful than human beings, such that they will come and help us resolve the Earth's problems. Then we can concern ourselves with going to see what other planets are like how life and matter are organized, and everything regarding nature. But most important is first to resolve the problems of humanity on Earth. We do not have a fantasist or idealist position with regard to flying saucers. As we accept that they exist, we want to use all means at hand, including those from outside of this planet. When we seriously reach a scientific discovery, we must try to use it for the benefit of humanity. And now, our final section, the infinite development of humanity's scientific capacity. The longest human life of which we know was 160 years in duration, but we can keep our full mental faculties intact up until around 80 or 90 years of age. But an elephant which lives for more than 260 years has a much vaster memory. That means that the length of memory can be extended. Extraterrestrial beings could do so for more than 1 million years. Has there not been over 1 million years of human existence? And it reproduces itself incessantly, without destroying itself, without its reproduction wiping it out. Matter, in the case of mankind, persists by means of reproducing itself. It does not disappear. Just one form of the organization of matter, the form of human life, disappears. The matter transforms into something else and takes part in the transformation of something else. On other planets, matter could transform itself without needing to destroy its state of existence, nor its constitution as a living being. It may well not have to be reduced to ashes in order to feed something else. What is the meaning of a seed? It is matter in a primary state, which stimulates other elements and is reproduced in another form. It may be the case that among other beings there is no need for death for the sake of reproduction. We are not saying that this is so, but it is totally possible. Energy is still used in a very mechanical, limited, and rudimentary fashion. Today, we make use of the transformation of matter into energy, but not the energy that already exists in a natural state. This must be done. For example, we could suppress all oil refining necessary for the transformation of matter into energy. One day, energy will come from the air. Electricity is part of the structure and behavior of matter. We profit from this because we have discovered it. But all of this is very limited. Tomorrow, electricity will not be necessary. Everything that exists is energy. The condition of existence of an object is that it has energy. The organization of the human body, the brain and other organs and senses, is that proper to Earth. On other planets, it could be very different. We feed ourselves because the human organism is constituted in such a fashion as to make feeding ourselves necessary. This suits us partly for capitalism's sake, because otherwise there would be no reason to live in submission of this system. The scientific capacity of humanity is determined by societal organization. The organization of society in terms of private property is very limiting because the elan, courage, and audacity it allows for are determined by the interests of individual appropriation. Our audacity is thus very limited because it stops as soon as this interest is satisfied. If the human being goes further than this, he has the feeling of having gone too far. This societal limitation constrains the capacity of society. In socialist society, society's capacity will be unlimited. The notion of life, existence, society will be measured by the objective interests of life and progress. Existence and progress will be identified with one another. Notions of conservatism, parasitism, passivity will no longer exist. Progress will be existence itself, as is the case of matter. Matter does not exist if it does not progress and transform itself. The same is true for the life of society. It does not exist without progress. Society's condition of existence is progress. Immediately, progress will give elan to its capacity and to its audacity, which will be 1,000,000 times greater than those of the private property system. It will not be limited or determined by what suits individual interests. All society will be there to give confidence and reassurance. Common society-wide thought will change the forms of life. For example, in the same time that we today need to reach the moon, we will be able to travel distances of millions of light years. Today, we speak of millions of years. Tomorrow, the measure will not be the same. We will easily find ways of solving all the problems deriving from the notions of land, gravity, and atmospheric pressure. We will find a response to the essential problem, the capacity of society, organized as a single societal thought, will be able to resolve everything. There will not be, as there are today, certain people who think, certain faculties, certain universities. Universities exist insofar as a division, a separation is made. They serve the exploitation of society for the sake of capitalist profits. This is what universities serve for. Tomorrow we will have no need for them. Progress will be common amongst everyone, audacity facing up to nature. This question is important for a training in the knowledge and knowledge of Marxism. Marxist knowledge is unlimited. It does not stop at the question of social, economic, and political struggles. Understanding existence gives the assurance necessary for envisaging the solution of all problems. There is no problem beyond the remit of humanity. All the problems of humanity influence one another. The more we master knowledge of history, humanity, society, and matter, the more confidence we can have in addressing problems with resolution and audacity. Even without a prior preparation and knowledge in a specific field, but scientifically prepared with Marxism as our tool, with dialectics, we can address all problems. This is the essential aspect. The other is socialist audacity, drawn precisely from the objectivity of Marxism. We are not subject to nor dependent on what exists now, nor what will come in the future. We are objective, and our thought has no limits. The only limit is the lack of human capacity to understand more. This human capacity is also a product of social relations. That is why, in a socialist society, human capacity and knowledge will be the norm for all of humanity. People will have a scientific capacity superior to even Marx, which does not at all affect his historical importance. The development of history has continued today, and there exist conditions that did not exist in Marx's time. In the near future, scientific knowledge and society's confidence will develop the capacity of society. But we are not yet living out socialism. We are still in this society. The critical spirit is an essential condition inherent to Marxism of its historical force, inexhaustible up to the point where there appear superior means of interpretation, allowing us to understand the processes of nature. The dialectic will be one of its aspects. The critical spirit represents a constant feeling of the need for revision, analysis, observation, study, to see what effects and what conclusions arise from the development of nature and society. Marxism in itself is irreplaceable because it is a method for understanding the history of the world. Means of interpretation superior to Marxism will arrive, not because Marxism is incorrect, but because humanity will reach some better understanding. The dialectic will be part of some superior tool. All these people who accept the existence of flying saucers do so without the impulse or the will to develop scientific understanding, but simply because they are obliged to recognize a real event for what it is. But they do not have the systematic spirit or the objectivity to make use of the understanding that they have in the social terrain. For example, if life does exist on other planets, this means that there exist superior forms of social organization which do not oblige them to live as we do here, with wars. All those who accept the existence of flying saucers have only reported them. Like someone projecting a light onto a wall and saying this is a light, they draw no conclusions. We, on the contrary, take up these questions in order to contribute to understanding history and consequently to develop our audacity. The basis of historical audacity is certitude. The Vietnamese masses are a demonstration of this. It is Marxism that gives this confidence. It is very important to concern ourselves with these questions. Yet, we do not have time. Certainly, we must give full attention to these problems we find before us, without thus losing sight of other questions. We are not indifferent to these. We accept that extraterrestrial beings exist as a conclusion of dialectical thought. This gives us confidence that we can master no matter what other phenomena exist without being caught off guard. These problems do not put the dialectical method into doubt. On the contrary, they do but confirm it. This is confirmed on every occasion. We believe that extraterrestrial beings may exist as well as flying saucers. This also holds, basing ourselves on the knowledge we have thanks to dialectics with regard to the organization of matter. There is no reason, for example, that reproduction must always take place by means of couples. There may also be self-reproduction, as is the case for the amoeba. Why could this not also be the case for humans in future? These beings from other planets come to observe life down here and laugh at humans. We who fight each other and who has the most cannons, cars, and wealth. The possession of wealth is a distortion of human feeling by societal organization. Instead, the human sentiment is fraternal, collective one. Possessing wealth is a degeneration of these sentiments. Why does the bourgeoisie want 20 cars, 100 factories, the rank of general? Why? What does it give him? Power over others? And what then? It does not give him any capacity to raise and develop his intelligence. On the contrary, it limits it. The bourgeois class can have no interest in or perspective of seeking objectivity to develop society. It is only concerned with material goods from which it can draw profits, and thus the perpetuation and extension of private property. This limits its understanding and prevents it from thinking. Even if the information on flying saucers is fantasist, as it most often is, the historical basis for it is correct. Neither capitalism nor the bureaucracy in the workers' states, nor any bourgeois thinker can explain this. They are all at sea, overwhelmed. Those who could do so do not have the means because they depend on the major scientific and research institutions, which are themselves dependent on capitalism. It is necessary to try and understand these phenomena, not simply to increase our knowledge, but to extend the application of Marxism to all branches of knowledge. For example, thought. The speed of thought depends on the dominant material means. Thought is still very limited today. Tomorrow, it will be infinitely more powerful and quicker, too, when the class struggle has been eliminated and harmony is a necessity of life. Thought will have a field of operation and possibilities of development infinitely superior to those that exist today. Today, the thought is very limited from infancy onwards. To draw deeper conclusions on these questions, we must follow them attentively. Interest ourselves with them, discuss them, learn about and study them. Other phenomena like that of UFOs will present themselves. A whole series of things will attract our attention. Is the development of matter in another universe similar to that here? If it is different, what form will it take? The utilization of matter must certainly take place at a superior level. Organisms are not created arbitrarily, but according to certain compositions and relations internal to matter. The organism is structured starting from inorganic matter when taking on an organic form, and then in function of the environment in which it evolves. These beings coming from other planets with a structure similar to mankind may well originate from a process of the organization of matter similar to that on Earth. They may also have used matter in order to take this form. They could do so if they have mastered science, just as here we could move mountains. Mao Zedong says that we must do this with a pickaxe and a spade, but those beings do so by means of putting the mountain's energy into action. It is possible, but it is not a problem we can resolve just now. We do not have the times or the means. Already, we can reproduce life. Certainly, that must be true also of other planets. These beings can do this. Here, we transplant hearts and kidneys, fundamental organs of the human body. But it is possible that on other planets, they create life. Engels told us that already in his time it was possible to produce artificial protoplasm, this being an essential basis of the cell, and thus a basis for existence. The discussion of these questions will soon become more generalized because it makes for the progress of humanity in its integration with nature and the universe. J. Posadism. There you go. So that is the writing of J. Posadis. Wow. I must say, after reading that, I feel very different. I feel very different. You know, I think that Posadis has a very powerful ability, a very powerful spiritual ability about him. And this is probably why he was able to lead a mass movement. And a few points of differentiation between Posadis and this Posadist Rebel News guy, and a lot of the stereotypes about Posadism, is that Posadis explicitly advocates against war, and specifically advocates for the abandonment of all nuclear weapons. And try as I might, I have looked and I have not found a single article written by Posadis or by any Posadist organization which states the inevitability of nuclear war or talks about any kind of post-apocalyptic socialism, nor have I found anything that they write which states the certainty of the alliance between alien life and human life. Posadis, in his article, he goes on to entertain this idea in great depth, but at no point does he say that this collaboration between human and alien life is a certainty that we can bet upon. And I think that this is an important thing, right? And in reading these articles, I think that it's very mind-opening. It's very eye-opening. I think that if you approach this with an open mind and say, what is good about what he's saying, what you realize is that the artificial limits imposed by capitalism do go beyond simple economic limitations. And we must realize that the establishment of socialism will unleash science, and it will unleash our ability to do all manner of things. And if there is extraterrestrial life, the only way we're ever going to get in contact with it is if some people actually put in the work to figure out how to communicate with them, which we've done to some extent. But when the people are motivated, when people in general have access to these resources necessary and the education necessary, all fields of science will be accelerated in this way. And so to me, my reading of Posadis, I tend to ignore what he's saying about, the Soviet Union's not real socialism, we have socialist bureaucracy and all this. I mean, this is the generic Trotskyist line. I tend to ignore these things, but the part that I really think is interesting is this sort of revolutionary optimism about socialism transcending all forms of scarcity and the inevitability of development of science leading to a total mastery of matter and energy, which can transcend many of the things that we consider limitations of today. And I think that even if this is not an inevitable result of the development of science, this is kind of the goal of science, is the complete mastery of nature, maybe not complete, but the mastery of nature over time, right? So he's describing this extreme future science, maybe in 1 million years. This is what science will look like. Who knows? Right? So Posadis has this brilliant imagination, and he has a great spiritual power about him, right? So I think that I actually looked into the existing Posadist organizations. The Posadist Fourth International actually is still alive, right? And they actually, this is very interesting because they are more authentically anti-imperialist than a lot of the existing Trotskyist movements. They actually, maybe it's just because they're based in Argentina, which doesn't, Argentina doesn't have this sort of Western arrogance to it, right? Argentinians don't believe themselves floating above the world in the same way as the sort of Western imperialists whose thinking influences Trotskyism in like America, for example, right? So yes, Posadis does accuse the Soviets and Chinese of falling to bureaucracy and opposes Stalin, but he also praised the Cuban Revolution, and the Posadist International actually is in support of Russia's intervention in Ukraine, and they honor, for example, the Soviet astronaut Yuri Gagarin. And I believe that they have, though they're critical of the Soviet Union, they actually have a more optimistic view on Soviet socialism than a lot of the other Trotskyist orgs. And to be honest, I think it could be interesting to interview a Posadist. They actually do allow ways of getting in contact with their org. So, the Posadist International, I don't think it represents, as they say, the last true bastion and vanguard of revolution due to Posadis's, innovations and all this. I don't really think that is the case. But I'm still interested in talking to them and allowing them to make that case. And maybe asking them a few questions because, there may be some questions that you would want to ask a Posadist. Right? And, yeah. So with that, I'm going to leave this stream open for chat to ask any questions. Or anything that you guys want me to cover before I log off tonight. Mare says, are you aware of the shooting of Shinzo Abe? I believe that is the Prime Minister of Japan. He was shot. Wow, is he living? Let's take a quick look at this news here. Okay. We have Shinzo Abe. Okay. Hospitalized after a possible shooting. Wow. Okay. It looks like NHK is going to be the source on this here. Yeah, that I don't know why they don't like to show NHK here. Here we go. They may be covering it live here, but
station.
Yep, they are covering it live right here.
Station line is crossing with another line, and this is the place where many people give out speech. And the young two women from nearby also witnessed this incident.
At around 11:30 this morning, former Prime Minister Abe Shinzo collapsed after being shot by the culprit. Seems that he is now showing any vital signs. The
That's
gunman has
11:30
been
Japan
arrested
time,
on the
right?
suspect of attempted murder. A male in 40s, Yamagami Tetsuya, was the person who was arrested on the charge of suspected murder. Near Yamato Saidaiji Station in Nara Prefecture, former Prime Minister Abe has been shot and has been rushed to hospital. According to the firefighting department, Prime Minister Abe is showing no vital signs, and he is being rushed to Nara Medical University
showing
on a
no
doctor's
vital
helicopter.
signs.
And the visual of
Does that mean
Prime
what I
Minister
think it
Abe
is?
being transported into the helicopter has been visually captured. Reportedly, there has been 2 gunshots, and Prime Minister Abe collapsed, bleeding after the gunshot. The man who was on the site has been arrested on the charge of suspected murder. And the gun used for the shot, or the firearm, has been also confiscated as well. This is a visual when the man was arrested. Secret Service personnel have captured and seized the man. And this was the site of the gunshot in Nara. The person who has been arrested on the charge of suspected murder is Yamagami Tetsuya, in his 40s. Former Prime Minister Abe, upon being rushed to the hospital, was responsive to the first responders. However, he also stopped showing vital signs, allegedly. The government at 11:45 a.m., the Crisis Management Center has been established within the Prime Minister's official residence.
Yeah, it's my question.
Prime Minister
Why?
Kishida was planning to provide supportive speech in Kyoto and Yamagata, but he will be coming back to Tokyo. According to Abe faction members, former Prime Minister Abe has been visiting one of the LDP candidates, flying from Haneda to Osaka before entering Nara Prefecture. After providing the speech there, he was planning to go back to Saitama Prefecture for another stump speech.
His man says he heard that it was actually like a firework.
As we've been reporting, former Prime Minister Abe Shinzo has been shot during a speech in Nara City near Kyoto. Police have identified the man arrested for attempted murder. They say Yamagami Tetsuya in his 40s and lives in Nara. He was carrying a gun at the time of his arrest. This video posted on social media appears to show a group of men in suits apprehending someone soon after the shooting. The latest news we have on Abe's condition is from emergency officials. They say he doesn't appear to have any life signs.
He doesn't have any life signs. Guys.
Early reports
if they're translating that properly, I think that means he's dead.
And the police have arrested one man.
Life signs.
Mr. Abe's condition is unknown at this moment. We are currently confirming the situation. At the government at 11:45 at the Prime Minister's office,
no
we have
body
set up
temperature,
a
no
crisis
pulse
management
rate, no
headquarters and
respiration, no
task force.
blood pressure.
We are holding meetings and gathering information and responding to the
that
situation.
means he's probably dead.
A report has made
unless they
immediately
have
to
some
Prime Minister
crazy
Kishida.
Japanese rehabilitation technology here.
To Tokyo to the Prime Minister's office immediately. Cabinet members who are through nationwide for making speeches to support for the campaign will be returning to Tokyo. Such violence cannot be permitted, and we oppose this strongly, and we will take every necessary measure possible. That's it for the time being. This was the Chief Cabinet Secretary Matsuno. So we're joined by our political reporter. Let's discuss what he mentioned. So from the Chief Cabinet Secretary, Secretary's statement, there's been few things that's come to clear. So it was around 11:30, and they have arrested one person, and they are looking at the condition of Mr. Abe at this moment. It's not clear at this moment. The government says that they have set up a crisis management task force and headquarters and are coordinating with relevant organizations. Mr. Kishida has canceled his speech and will be returning to the Prime Minister's office. Cabinet members who are campaigning or helping out with the campaign throughout Japan are to return to Tokyo. He also said that he condemns such violence and could never be permitted. Chief Cabinet Secretary Matsuno said they are currently confirming the condition of former Prime Minister Abe. And Prime Minister Kishida is to return to Tokyo to the Prime Minister's office. And also the cabinet members will be returning and they will discuss further response. Any other information from LDP? We were discussing information to the LDP. Government sources say and told NHK that Mr. Abe is not responsive and that the situation is very bad. So this is a government source's comment. Chief Cabinet Secretary Matsuno said that they are currently confirming the condition of Mr. Abe, but government sources who spoke to NHK says that he is in a very bad condition and not responding. Former Prime Minister Abe was helping out a candidate who is running in the coming upper house election. This morning he left Haneda Airport and via Osaka Airport he went into Nara Prefecture and was making his speech and was shot.
And there was a shot during his speech and there were some responses from the political circle as well. Yes, so the Kumeito, the junior ruling party, Chief Cabinet Secretary Ishii says that this cannot be tolerated and he was very much surprised. And he would like to pray for the safety of Mr. Abe and he wishes this incident have to be thoroughly investigated.
I wonder if there's anybody that knows what is going on in Japan.
Says that he prays for the safety and revival of Abe, and Adachi Yasushi says that he was struck and he really wishes Mr. Abe to survive. And
it looks like in 2018 through 2019 there were peaceful protests against Shinzo Abe.
And he prays for the safety and revival of Abe. And Chief Cabinet Secretary Matsuno says that later the ruling party or the LDP, what are they going to do?
Going back to normal
They're
mode.
going to call the cabinet back to the headquarters, and the government as a whole will consult what to do next. And the LDP is now under campaign, and as a party, what they're going to do will be discussed. And there would be a news conference from the LDP as well. Well, the LDP of Nara later will, from 1 p.m., give out news conference that was announced. So today, 11:30 p.m., former Prime Minister Abe was shot during speech, and the fire department says that Prime
2018
Minister Abe
article
seems to be
here.
under cardiac pulmonary arrest, and the police murdered a man.
So he is under pulmonary arrest, they said. So he's probably dead. And I'm reading here. We'll give you English captions just in case you want to still read this, but I'm going to speak about. I was looking, is this a random act of terrorism or does this coincide with some sort of political movement? Well, it looks here, this article in 2018 from Bloomberg is talking about some protests. Actually, I'm going to switch to these. And, okay. Protesters call for liar Abe to resign over scandal. Deny his involvement in 2 controversies over land deals. An alleged cover-up over the activity of Japanese troops during the Iraq War. Spokesperson for obvious cause didn't respond to it. His approval ratings are very low, it says. Down to 37%. And this was in 2018. It's interesting. Organizers of the gathering said 350,000 people attended. Wow. And in 2015, there were protests. Who organized the protests? Okay. Who, this is the thing about Bloomberg, right? Okay, I want to know more about these protests, right? I have to know the name of who organized them. And it is not saying who. Okay? So,
National Rebuilding Minister has entered the building of LDP headquarters, followed by Mr. Hosoda of another executive of LDP. Chief Cabinet Secretary Matsuno Hirokazu says that the actual condition of former Prime Minister is yet to be fully known. Motegi also is moving from Niigata to Osaka, and other senior members of the LDPs are doing the campaign speeches across the nation. For the upcoming election, party senior members have been visiting the party candidates, and Abe is evidently one of the most popular supporting speechmaker as well. And there have been comments from other party leaders as well, condemning such a barbaric act. It's been some 90 minutes since the incident, reporting from the site. Yamato Saidaiji Station North Gate in Nara Prefecture. It's been about 1 hour and a half after the incident. The traffic circle is crowded with people watching the situation. Police is carrying out inspection and examination of the site.
So yes, they say that he has no vital signs, but no confirmation if he's alive or not. So I guess they're going to give him a high-speed heart surgery, Japanese style, in order to keep him alive here, guys. I don't know about that one, but I am digging a little bit here, and I'm finding a bit more inflammation about this and that. Criticism of Mr. Abe, right? So, or Mr. Shinzo, rather. I think Abe is his first name, right? This, I don't know who this is. Who is this? Mary Ann Liebert. I don't know who this is. It's calling him right wing. I think this is a liberal who is alleging that Abe used right wing political bots. I don't know. Okay, well, I mean, if the liberals don't like him, that is still a large group of people that don't like him. Okay, well, this is not showing up, so see if it can archive it. I don't know. This NPR article I'm reading on the other side of my screen here. I do want to buy a second screen, but I don't currently have the funds. It says that 26% approval rating for Abe. That's incredibly low. That is incredibly low. I mean, all the Japanese people I can find on Twitter are super liberal and not like, they want to make their own country seem peaceful. You know, they don't want to prop up stereotypes about crazy Japanese people, you know. So I understand that, but like, if you got a problem in your country, you should, you know, you can't deny it. They say he has work without pay and other stuff. Here it is, trying to archive this site. Yeah, I don't know, for whatever reason, when I cannot get access to a website for one reason or another, archive.ph will find a way in. So or paywalls, it'll just hop right over those paywalls. You know, pretty nice website. For a while when RT was down, archive.ph could get access to it. So there you go. Japan's discretionary labor system. What you need to know. It's premium. All right. Well, let's see. What are the odds that the rest of the text is actually there underneath the thingy? Let's see if that's true here. Hello? This is a bit odd. Here. This text. Okay. More text. So yeah, it's only showing the part that loads. So it's the website is reactive. It's only showing the part that loads. That's a shame. That is a total shame. I'm going to, this is a relatively fresh Chrome, right? But, wait, really? I have to get a zip file for Chrome? Damn. That's annoying. I'm going to do that some other time. But yeah, Japan's discretionary labor system. Apparently this article talks about how their labor system, I mean, as you know, you've probably heard of the term, what is it? Is it this? Yeah, karoshi, people working themselves to death. I mean, if that's really happening, I don't attribute that to culture. Some people might try to attribute that to culture. I think the only reason somebody would work themselves to death is because they have to, right? Like either you do it or you get fired or you're not getting paid enough or, you know. So if you have that going on, I mean, that means you're not doing that well. Let's go back to...
And after 12:30, there are many people coming in to this office. And around this office, we see the policemen and the police car, and it seems like they are now very busy looking around the area. And he was in Shimonoseki to give out a speech for the candidate. So this was the latest information from the front of the Abe's office. And we have the political reporter. We see various footage coming in. And former Prime Minister Abe is on the ground, on his back. So according to all these informations, what can we say? Well, it took place at around 11:30 today, and former Prime Minister Abe was shot during speech. And Yamato Saidaiji Station, Kintetsu Line, was a place where he was shot, and police say that Abe was shot from his back. And this is the footage. At that time, we can see that white smoke on the left-hand side. Yes, so it was from his back side, and the white smoke was rising on the left-hand side of this footage. And the police say that Abe is now under cardiac pulmonary arrest, and many people came around Abe to give measure, and about 1 or 2 minutes right after he started giving out speech, they heard the gunshot.
So, look at this. This is interesting. Japanese Communist Party Chair Shi Kazuo, July 15th, 2014, called on the audience to create a public movement to bring down Prime Minister Shinzo Abe. The Abe is the worst among successive governments led by the Liberal Democratic Party. Abe's policies are dangerous to the government. They don't want Japan to be a war-fighting country. Japan's international trust nurtured by Article 9 of the Constitution. I wonder what that means. It's interesting. Yeah, so let's work together to block Abe's ambition to revive militarism. Well, I know that's the general line of the Japanese Communist Party. They are anti-militarist, and they're like kind of anti-China, and they're like kind of, like they're not like the greatest communist party around, but they're anti-militarist, and they also want the West to get off of their backs, right? And these are the main issues that they concentrate on. And maybe that's their strategy. Maybe it's a decent strategy. I'd like to know more from somebody that knows more about Japan itself. Another article here. The Japanese Communist Party opposes the Japan-U.S. trade negotiations, which disregard Japan's economic sovereignty. No surprise here that the liberal democratic government of Shinzo Abe is also sacrificing economic sovereignty to America. Folks, this is what we call the open society, right? See, when you have an open society, it's like when a mosquito opens your vein. It's like, you're open, right? Your economy's open, which means that the parasites are, are opening up your skin, basically. And one of the key tenets of socialism, right, is what's called the monopoly on foreign trade. Now, I don't know, private companies are probably allowed to make deals to some extent on a global stage, like Chinese private companies, for example. But I'd like to know more about that. But the point of the monopoly on foreign trade is that at the end of the day, the state is deciding what makes sense to trade and not to trade in order to allow the economy to develop in the intended way, right? So, for example, when Trump put protectionist tariffs on American industry, that's not that bad of a policy, except, you have to actually develop American industry, right? So in some ways, tariffs and protectionism are absolutely in service of socialism and national economic development, but you also have to allocate the funds using national banks in order to actually create that development in the first place. You can create the economic opportunity for development, but it doesn't mean that that development itself will occur. And I think that's really the mistake that I see, right, with that sort of protectionism. And look at this. So, Prime Minister Shinzo Abe has so far declined to enter into negotiations on a free trade agreement with the U.S. Okay, the FTA, Free Trade Agreement, meaning the U.S. can buy and sell as they wish. And if the United States can produce something more cheaply than the Japanese economy, it can and it will. I'm going to make chat a little bit bigger on stream here, now that I notice it's a little bit small, I think. So let's just do that here. Okay. And there we go. A little bit bigger chat. Let the fans be heard. And yeah, thank you, Jennifer. Yeah, I think it's kind of how I think, right? It's analogies and so this free trade agreement, U.S. trade agreements on goods. I mean, just like NAFTA, right? This is imperialism. This is the open society. They make comparisons. The TPP, Free Trade Pact. That's imperialism, right? Because America has the strong arm. We dictate when you can and can't trade. That means that we can. It's kind of like a monopoly on power is the thing. So the dollar system is like a monopoly on power, and eventually that monopoly is going to run out of power as it unravels bit by bit by bit by bit. And I do think it's interesting that the recent unraveling of the dollar system, as it's being offset by China and by the new BRICS payment systems, and with Russia trading gas in rubles, which means rubles are being used as a reserve currency, and rubles are strengthening and having the petro ruble, right? I do think that, and the sanctions are causing countries to accelerate cutting off with America, right? Which means that they're going to develop their own thing. Our system is going to unravel. And if countries can support themselves without having to trade with the West, without having to use the SWIFT payment system, if Afghanistan's economy can grow, actually as it is growing, Afghanistan's economy is growing. Well, if a fully sanctioned country like Afghanistan can grow, if a fully sanctioned country like Cuba or North Korea can grow and succeed right now, then we know that the dollar system cannot continue as it is without some kind of war, open war against these countries building a resistance to the dollar system, right? So
across the country.
All right, thank you for your insights, Yoshi. Prime Minister Kishida Fumio has cancelled its remaining campaign events for today in the wake of the shooting. He was slated to hold speeches in Fukushima and Kyoto this afternoon. He's now heading back to Tokyo from Yamagata. At the time of the attack, Abe was in Nara to support Liberal Democratic Party candidates running in Sunday's upper house election, and we're starting to hear comments from some Japanese political figures. Former lower house speaker Oshima Tadamori told NHK that he was shocked by the situation. He says political expression should never be suppressed by violence, and the use of a firearm is unacceptable. Now let's turn to a domestic broadcast with simultaneous interpretation.
So he was in his position for 8 years, and after being prime minister, he's leading the largest faction in the LDP to give out advices on security and economic matters. And in this upper house election, he was supporting various candidates, and he has a great influence inside the LDP. And Abe was shot, and we hear many responses from the political circle as well. Yes, both from ruling party as well as opposition party. Well, many parties were on campaign, and this is the root of the democracy, and the violence cannot be tolerated. And also, all the people in the political circle are concerned of Abe's recovery and safety. And it's about 1 hour and 40 minutes after the shot, and it took place at 11.
This article is basically saying here, add to this situation, that the Japanese Communist Party is afraid that Abe will lead Japan into supporting US-backed imperialist wars as well. So I think that this assassination of Abe, with his long reign of power, right? I don't know how long he's been in power, long time. His pro-war, free market policy, right? And which has led to workers working in conditions where they literally die. They work themselves to death. Right? Combined with the large protests, I mean, the numbers vary between 5,000 and 350,000. That's quite a bit of variance, but the large protests, even recently, right? All of these facts, to me, these lead me to think that a lot of Japanese people are probably cheering over what just happened. I'm sure that they, I'm sure that the Japanese Communist Party is already putting out statements saying that they do not endorse this assassination, obviously. Obviously, they can only advocate for peaceful struggles, right? And, of course, I don't endorse the assassination of political leaders, but I can imagine that a lot of Japanese people are celebrating, though we also have to ask who is going to replace Abe, right? So for this, you need to look at the policy of the Japanese government. Right. So for that, I'm going to be a little bit lost, but I could Google the question just to see who will replace Shinzo Abe, right? Does not say. People are also asking who will replace Boris Johnson. Isn't it crazy that on the same day as Boris Johnson's resignation, so too has Shinzo Abe resigned from life, as far as we can tell here. Or not so much resigned, but was defeated.
To report that gunshots has been heard when the Abe collapsed onto the ground. AP of France says that Prime Minister Abe has been shot and injured, and BBC says that he was shot during a political event. Major American media is reporting on this incident, and CNN is quoting NHK reporting and also stated that one of the most prominent Japanese politicians has been shot in a country where gun control is much stricter than in the United States. And breaking news has been distributed by NHK across the globe as well. And U.S. government is not still making any official comment on this incident. It's been almost 2 hours since the incident, and one of NHK reporter, Oikawa, has been making a video tapes on this. And this is what happened when the gunshots has been heard. 2 gunshots has been heard before the suspect was arrested.
So we know this, but I guess I'll play it again in case anyone just tuned in.
And nearby was also cylindrical shapes of items that has been wrapped together with sticker tapes. And this is the video taken by Oikawa of NHK.
What? Cylindrical items wrapped in sticker tape?
Two gunshots are heard, and the man had been held by what seems to be security police.
Yeah, what is that?
On the road, we see this item. It is taped. It seems to be taped by duct tape, black one. So what you see here, this item here, object, we don't know what that is. Yes, it is taped together, it seems, with a black duct tape. But police have said that they have confiscated a gun. So we now have the footage of when Mr. Abe was shot. There's some witness accounts and with NHK reporting. So what are the information we currently have and know about? So it was 11:29 when Mr. Abe started to deliver his speech. So it was in support for the campaign for an LDP upper house candidate. And from the cell phone footage, it's the opposite direction. It's behind Mr. Abe. So to his back, we could see the white smoke. And it appears he's been shot by what seems to be a shotgun. And we heard those 2 shots, very heavy shots. Also dry, but a large noise. And with the second shot, we have witness accounts that he collapsed. And there's some large buildings, so the sound could have resonated as well. And at this moment, we know that Yamagami Tetsuya, 41-year-old resident of Nara Prefecture, has been arrested. After he made the shots, he did not attempt to run away, and he was caught by the security personnel. He is currently being held and questioned at Nara.
So yeah, I don't know what kind of object that would be. But that is intriguing. It's very Japanese of them to know that that was black duct tape and to describe that it was taped together. Just kind of anyway. Yeah, that's all I think I have on this whole shooting. I think I've sort of analyzed it. You know, I wonder if there's anybody living in Japan who I could reach out to learn more about it. But that is that. And I think I'm going to wrap up. The stream is hitting 3 hours now, and I'm getting tired. So I will see everybody another time. I will see you on Sunday evening, where I will be interviewing Char Darling of CPI about an article that she is writing about the surprising origin of mass shootings. So I hope that you guys can be there. I hope that you can help me to share the stream, spread this stream. And if you want to see me in higher quality, and you want the stream to go a bit more smoothly, then donate to my Cash App. That is 44100HZ. I have $15 out of $200. After I reach $200, I will no longer be asking for donations. And if you agree with me and you like what we're trying to achieve here, consider donating to CPI. CPI is organizing a conference on August 5th in Chicago. And that conference is going to be great. I should have a better pitch for it than simply to say there will be a conference, but nonetheless, I will be attending. If you go there, you can meet me. We could shake hands and maybe even a tender hug if warranted. So with that, guys, I will be logging off. It was great to see everybody, and until next time, bye-bye.